You set the ball down after a single game, and your thumb is already throbbing like you shut it in a car door. The skin at the base burns, the joint aches, and by the third frame next week, you're gripping softer, rolling weaker, and quietly wondering if this is the year you finally give up the league. Here's what I found after months of digging. The thing that saves your thumb isn't a new ball, a custom grip, or a $40 insert. It's a fix that costs about $2 at any drugstore, and the old league bowlers who swore by it never bothered to write it down. It got buried for a simple reason. The men and women who used it in the 1950s learned it by mouth, at the alley, from someone older, and when they stopped bowling, the knowledge went quiet with them. I'm going to show you the whole trail, all the way to a remedy listed in a pharmacy book older than your grandmother. And I promise you this works in the body you have right now, with the thumb you have right now, no matter how many years you've been bowling. I'll tell you where this started for me. I was standing in a half-shuttered bowling alley outside Toledo, the kind with the old wooden approach still under the newer synthetic, and an 81-year-old man who used to run the pro shop reached under the counter and pulled out a little brown bottle. He said, "This is what we gave the league bowlers with bad thumbs. $2. Nobody asks for it anymore. That bottle is where this case ends, but it's not where it begins." Let me back up, because the first thing I had to unlearn was the reason everybody blames. When your thumb hurts after bowling, the first thing everyone tells you is that your ball is too heavy. Drop down from a 15-pound ball to a 14 or a 14 to a 12 and the pain goes away. That's the advice at every counter. So I tried it. I dropped a full pound and the soreness came right back within 2 weeks. That's when I started reading, and I found something that stopped me cold. The pain most senior bowlers feel in the thumb is almost never about the weight of the ball. It's about friction and fit inside that one hole. Your thumb goes in dry, the ball swings forward, and at the release, your thumb has to slide out cleanly in a fraction of a second. If the hole grabs even slightly, your skin drags against the edge, and the joint gets yanked. Do that 20 times a game, 60 times a night, and you've got a thumb that feels like it's been in a vice. I learned that the old-timers understood this 80 years ago, back when a bowling ball was hard rubber and the holes were drilled rough. They didn't have the money to keep re-drilling, so they learned to manage the skin and the slide instead of the ball. That knowledge was practical, cheap, and specific, and almost none of it survived into the modern pro shop. I found the first real clue in a 1961 bowling instruction booklet, the kind sold at dime stores, and it mentioned something it called protecting the thumb as casually as tying your shoes, like every bowler already knew what that meant. But it didn't say how, and that gap is exactly where the trail got interesting. So, I went looking for what protecting the thumb actually meant, and the answer led me straight to a roll of tape that costs almost nothing. Here's the part that surprised me. There are 2 completely different jobs that tape does inside a thumb hole, and most people, including a lot of younger bowlers, only know about one of them. The first job is protection. This is a soft white cloth tape, sometimes called bowler's tape or protective tape, and you stick it on your thumb, or on the back wall of the hole where your thumb rubs. It's smooth. It lets your thumb slide out clean at the release instead of dragging. A roll of it runs about $2 to $4 and lasts for months. The second job is fit. This is a different tape, usually textured on one side, and it goes inside the hole to make it slightly smaller. Here's why that matters more than you'd think. As we get older, our fingers and thumbs change size through the day and through the seasons. In the morning, your thumb might be a little swollen. In a warm alley after 2 games, it swells more. In winter, it shrinks. A hole that fit perfectly when it was drilled 10 years ago does not fit you the same way today. When the hole is too big, your thumb has to squeeze and grip to hang on to the ball. That squeezing is what wrecks the joint and burns the skin. You're not holding the ball with your hand anymore. You're clenching it, and every clench drags that thumb harder on the way out. So I tested it. I put 2 strips of insert tape on the back of the hole, the side your thumb pad presses against, until my thumb sat snug without me squeezing at all. The difference on the very first game was something I could feel in the joint. I wasn't gripping. The ball came off my hand instead of being ripped off it. That booklet from 1961 had it right. Protecting the thumb meant both things at once. A smooth surface so it slides, and a snug fit so it doesn't have to grip. $2 of tape. Doing the work that people now pay $40, $60, even $100 to solve. And that's when I hit the thing that made me angry. Because when I walked into 3 different pro shops and described my sore thumb, not one of them mentioned tape first. Every single one steered me toward a thumb insert, a slug, a new drilling, or a whole new ball. The cheapest option they offered me was $35. The most expensive was over $200. Now, I'm not saying those things never help. Sometimes a hole really is wrong and needs work. But I sat there realizing the $2 answer, the one that would fix most sore thumbs for most senior bowlers, was the one thing nobody wanted to sell me. There's no margin in a roll of tape. There's no repeat customer in a fix that lasts. The advice you get at the counter tends to match what makes the counter money, and a $2 roll of tape doesn't keep the lights on. I don't think it's a grand conspiracy. I think it's simpler and sadder than that. The cheap knowledge just stopped getting passed down because nobody had a reason to pass it down. The old bowler who would have told you for free is gone. The counter that sells you the insert is still there. So I kept pulling the thread because tape solved the slide and the fit. But it didn't explain the deep ache some of us feel in the joint itself, the one that lingers the next morning. That was a different clue, and it took me somewhere I didn't expect. Here's the question that nagged at me. Why do some people tape up perfectly and still wake up with a thumb that throbs? The answer turned out to be about swelling and heat, and it's something the old alley regulars managed without ever thinking of it as medicine. When you bowl, that thumb goes through real stress. Repeated pressure, repeated pulling, over an hour or 2. If you already have a little arthritis in that joint, and most of us past 60 do whether we've been told or not, the repeated motion inflames it. The joint swells. The swelling makes the hole feel tighter, so you grip harder to compensate, which inflames it more. It's a loop. I found that older bowlers handled this in 2 plain ways, and both cost almost nothing. The first is warming the hand before you bowl, not after. We all know to ice a sore joint later. But the regulars I talked to warmed their bowling hand before the first ball, running it under warm water in the restroom or just working it, opening and closing the fist 20 or 30 times, rolling the thumb in slow circles. A warm, loose joint moves easier and swells less than a cold, stiff one you throw straight into a heavy ball. One woman, 79, told me she hadn't skipped that warm-up in 40 years and never had the morning after ache the others complained about. The second is even simpler. They kept the thumb dry. A damp thumb swells and sticks in the hole. So the old habit was to carry a small bag of rosin or grip powder, or even a bit of talc, and keep that thumb bone dry between frames. Dry skin slides, damp skin grabs and tears. That's the whole secret behind those little grip bags you've seen and maybe never understood. So I had a lot now. Snug fit, smooth slide, warm joint, dry skin. Every piece cheap. Every piece nearly forgotten. And I could feel the difference in my own hand after a single week. And when a thumb stops fighting the ball, something else happens that nobody warns you about. The rest of your game starts asking questions too. Why the ball goes long and straight. Why the shoulder burns by game 3. Why the corner pin keeps standing there mocking you. Everything I could fit into one video lives in this video, freely, and I want you using it tonight. What wouldn't fit is the rest of the work, months of it, written out in 3 books of mine for bowlers past 65. How to bring the hook back with a sheet of sandpaper and nothing new bought, how to loosen the grip and pace yourself so the thumb and shoulder last all 3 games, and how to aim at the arrows instead of the pins so open frames stop eating your average. Same ball, same lane, same arm you already have. To take that home, scan the QR code right there on your screen, link in the description, pinned comment for the books. Now, back to the counter, because that was the moment the honest question hit me. But I want to stop here and talk to one person watching this, because I know exactly what you're thinking. Maybe you're telling yourself this whole thing is for the serious league bowlers, the folks who show up 3 nights a week with their own shoes and their own bag. Maybe you only bowl once in a blue moon with the grandkids, using a house ball off the rack. Maybe your hands aren't what they were, and you've half decided bowling just isn't for you anymore because it hurts too much to be fun. I went looking specifically for you because you're the person most likely to quit over something that has a $2 answer. Here's what I found for you. And you can do all of it with a house ball, alone, with nothing but a couple of dollars from the drugstore. First, the house ball. Those rack balls are drilled generic, and the thumb hole is almost always too big for an older hand, which is the worst case, because it forces you to squeeze. You don't need to own a ball to fix this. Carry a small roll of that white protective tape in your pocket. Before you bowl, stick 2 or 3 layers on the back inside wall of the thumb hole, the side that faces your body when your fingers are in the finger holes. Push your thumb in, add or peel tape until your thumb sits snug enough that you don't have to clench to keep the ball on your hand. When you're done, peel the tape out and take it with you. Total cost? A couple of dollars, and it turns a painful rental ball into one that fits you. Second, before you even pick up that ball, warm the hand. 30 slow squeezes. Roll the thumb in circles both directions. Rub the joint until it feels warm and loose. It takes 1 minute in the restroom, and it's the difference between a thumb that glides and a thumb that gets yanked cold. Third, keep that thumb dry. If your hands sweat, dab a little talcum powder or cornstarch on the thumb before each turn. Dry skin slides out clean. That alone stops most of the skin burning and blistering. None of that requires a bag, a league, or a single dollar spent at a pro shop counter. It requires a roll of tape and 1 minute of warm-up. And if you've been avoiding the lanes because your thumb can't take it, I want you to know the barrier between you and that game is smaller and cheaper than anyone told you. But here's the thing. Everything I've told you so far manages the problem from the outside. The tape, the powder, the warm-up, they protect the skin and the fit. And that's exactly where I thought the case ended, until that old man in Toledo reached under the counter. Because there was one more thing the old bowlers did that nobody sells and almost nobody remembers. And it doesn't protect the skin from the outside. It changes the skin itself. Let me tell you what was in that little brown bottle. The old man called it the Tanner. And when I asked him what was actually in it, he read me the label, Compound Tincture of Benzoin. Some people know it by its old name, Friar's Balsam. It's a dark, sticky liquid, and it costs somewhere between $2 and $5 for a bottle that lasts a season or more. I'll be honest, I'd never heard of it, and I was sure it was some folk nonsense. So, I went and traced it, and what I found stopped my skepticism dead. Tincture of benzoin isn't a bowling gimmick. It's a genuine pharmacy preparation that has been in medical use for centuries. The version called Friar's Balsam traces back to formulas recorded in the 1600s and 1700s, and compound benzoin tincture has appeared in official pharmacy references, the pharmacopoeias that pharmacists actually compound from, for well over 100 years. Doctors used it on skin. Nurses painted it on before applying tape and bandages because it does 2 things at once. It makes the skin sticky so dressings hold, and it toughens the surface of the skin. That second part is the whole secret. Athletes figured this out generations ago. Boxers painted it on their faces to toughen the skin against splitting. Baseball players and gymnasts used it on their hands to harden the skin against tearing and blisters. Long-distance walkers painted it on their feet. It was one of the great quiet tricks of anyone whose skin took a beating for a living. And somewhere along the way, the old bowlers found it too. They painted a little tincture of benzoin on the thumb, the pad, and the sides where the hole rubs, and let it dry before they bowled. It dried into a thin, tough, slightly tacky layer that hardened the skin over time and protected it in the moment. The skin stopped tearing. The blisters stopped forming. The raw, burning soreness at the surface simply went away, because the surface had been turned into something closer to leather. Here's how the old man told me to use it, and here's how I tested it myself. You take the little brush or a cotton swab, and you paint a thin coat on the thumb, all around the part that touches the hole. You let it dry completely. It gets tacky, then hard. If you want the skin to toughen up over the long run, you do this after bowling and let it work overnight, and you repeat it a few times a week. Over a couple of weeks, the skin on that thumb changes. It gets tougher. It stops complaining. Now here's the part that made me laugh, because it ties the whole case together. When the benzoin is still slightly tacky, it grips. When it's fully dry and hardened, it slides. So the old bowlers would time it. A tacky coat when they wanted a firmer hold, a fully dry hardened coat when they wanted the thumb to release clean, $1, $2 bottle, controlling both grip and release, and toughening the skin at the same time. The pro shop wanted to sell me $100 of drilling and inserts to control those exact same things. And I want to be clear about the evidence, because I was skeptical too. This isn't a rumor from one old man. Compound benzoin tincture is a real, listed pharmaceutical preparation you can still buy at a pharmacy today. Its skin toughening and adhesive use is documented in medical and athletic training references going back generations. Athletic trainers still keep it in the kit. The Friar's Balsam name goes back centuries. This is not folk magic. It's a genuine, tested, cheap remedy that simply fell out of the bowling world because nobody had a financial reason to keep telling people about it. I did have to learn a couple of cautions the honest way, so I'll pass them on. A small number of people are sensitive to benzoin, so the sensible thing is to test a little dab on your skin first and make sure you don't react. Keep it off any open cut or raw blister because it will sting fiercely on broken skin, and let it dry all the way before you bowl, or it'll be a sticky mess. But used right, on the intact skin of a thumb that takes a pounding, it's exactly what the boxers and the ball players and the old league bowlers used, and it works. So there it was, the whole case, cracked open by a bottle under a counter. The heavy ball was a red herring. The $40 insert was a distraction. The real answer was a stack of cheap, forgotten habits that the old generation used together. Tape the hole snug so you don't grip. Keep a smooth surface so you slide. Warm the joint before the first ball. Keep the thumb dry. And toughen the skin itself with a $2 bottle of something pharmacists have compounded for over a century. Let me put all of it in your hand so you can walk into an alley this week and use it. Start with fit, because fit is the root of most thumb pain. If you own your ball and the thumb hole feels loose, or you find yourself squeezing to hang on, add layers of insert tape to the back wall of the hole until your thumb sits snug with no clenching. If you use a house ball, do the same thing with protective tape and peel it out when you're done. A thumb that doesn't have to grip is a thumb that doesn't get hurt. Then handle the slide. A smooth layer of white protective tape on the thumb or the back of the hole lets your thumb come out clean at the release, instead of dragging on the edge and yanking the joint. Then handle the joint. 1 minute of warm-up before your first ball. Squeeze the fist 30 times. Roll the thumb in slow circles both directions. Rub it until it's warm. A warm joint swells less and moves easier. Then handle the moisture. Keep the thumb dry with a dab of powder or a grip bag, because damp skin grabs and tears while dry skin slides. And then, the finale, handle the skin itself. A thin coat of compound tincture of benzoin, Friar's balsam, on the intact skin of the thumb, dried fully before you bowl, and reapplied a few times a week to toughen the skin over time. Test a dab first for sensitivity. Keep it off open cuts. That's the whole kit. Add it all up and you've spent maybe $8 or $10 total, once, and most of it lasts months. I think about that old man in Toledo a lot. He wasn't guarding a secret. He was just the last one in that building who still remembered. He reached under the counter without hesitation, like it was the most ordinary thing in the world, because to his generation, it was. The tragedy isn't that the knowledge was locked away. It's that it was left out in the open and simply stopped being spoken, until the only place you could hear it was from an 81-year-old man in an alley that was about to close for good. What you just recovered isn't a trick. It's a piece of practical skill that belonged to a whole generation of careful people, the kind who fix things for $2 instead of paying $200, and it was slipping away for no reason other than that nobody profits from telling you. If you're the kind of person who's always suspected that the cheap, simple answer exists and somebody just isn't telling you, you were right this whole time. That instinct is exactly what led me to that bottle, and it's exactly why the old ways are worth reopening. Now I want to hear from you, and I want you to actually do this, because I know this crowd reads and moves on without saying a word. Tell me in the comments, had you ever heard of tincture of benzoin, Friar's balsam, before today, or did someone in your family use it for something else entirely? Hands, feet, or a bad blister? Type it out below right now, even one line. Somebody else reading needs to hear that it's real, and your one comment might be the thing that keeps them bowling. And if this is the kind of buried practical knowledge you want more of, come along, because this is what we do here. We reopen the cheap old answers that got quietly replaced by expensive new ones. The next case I'm chasing is a nickel-cheap way the old-timers stopped their hands and knees from stiffening up in cold weather, using something already sitting in your kitchen cabinet, and once you see where that trail leads, you'll never look at that cabinet the same way again. Before you go, let me tell you where this goes next. Inside my membership, the Wise Living Circle, I pick up right where we left off and walk you through the full fix. If something isn't clear, ask me directly, and a real person, me, answers you myself. You won't be alone either. Just point your phone's camera at the code on the screen, and you can cancel any time. Now that your thumb feels better, let's talk about your ball itself. I'll show you a simple $1 trick that gives your hook real power again. No strength needed. It's starting right here.